in the Western US agricultural economies that are built on having snowmelt released throughout the irrigation season. What's happening currently, and more significant as we move forward through the century due to climate change, is that the snowmelt is going to arrive earlier. And there's a mismatch between when the snow water is available and when it's needed for downstream agriculture. So these agricultural communities are going to have to adjust to these changes in water availability, and in some cases also in terms of the volume of water available. My name is Mike Taylor, and I am the project director of the SNOWPACS Project. The SNOWPACS Project is a multi-year, multidisciplinary project funded by the National Institute for Food and Agriculture. So the SNOWPACS Project is looking at the impact of changing patterns of snowmelt for downstream agriculture and agricultural dependent communities, and is really focused on looking at how these communities can adapt to these changes in water timing and availability, particularly through adjusting institutions that govern water use.
The project takes place in two study areas, the Walker River Basin here in Nevada and the South Platte River Basin in Colorado. The goal of the SNOWPACS project is to help agricultural communities adapt to changing snowpack, which we're witnessing more often in the Intermountain Western United States.
Broadly speaking, across the Western U.S. are that snowpack levels are decreasing. So we're seeing impacts on our stream water delivery to these systems and generating really longer growing seasons, which can be potentially good, but also longer periods without snowmelt occurring, so that we're starting to see our summer flows get lower.
I think that the research is really important in that it's cross-cutting. It's looking at hydrology, it's looking at climate science, it's looking at economics, it's looking at various types of social science. That sort of nexus is really important to answer big questions like what happens to communities when our snowpack changes. But I also think as a student and a postdoc, I think a really tremendous opportunity to work with mentors from different disciplines who I think are really invested in the next generation of scientists.
The 5 pillars of the SNOWPACS project include collaborative research. Collaborative research is really the backbone of the project and is the reason why it is so important to identify and work with our community research partners who inform our research agenda. Second pillar of our SNOWPACS project includes hydrology. We have a team of very competent hydrologists who are able to predict snowpack and able to predict stream flow as a result of changes in snowpack. Another pillar of our SNOWPACS project are our agricultural producers and what happens to the agricultural production process as a result of changes in snowpack and earlier snowmelt. The fourth pillar of our SNOWPACS project are water allocation institutions. So we have environmental policy experts on the project, Elizabeth Cobley, who are looking at and are asking our community research partners how well these institutions are serving decision makers on the ground in the face of changing water supply. The fifth pillar of the SNOWPACS project is integrated hydrologic, climate, and economic models. These models aspire to show how changes in projected snowpack accumulation, snowmelt timing affect water supply and water deliveries during the summer months.
The reason why these kind of projects are multi-year and multidisciplinary is so that the components can support each other to do more ambitious research than might be possible on their own. So, really important component, and one of the first components really to get going on the project was kind of stakeholder engaged research led by Dr. Loretta Singletary and Dr. Elizabeth Cobley.
On the SNOWPACS project, I was one of the researchers and co-directors who helped collect primary data in the Walker and South Platte basins about different water transfer agreements and options. In order to study the water sharing arrangements, we surveyed diverse water users' perceptions of community water sharing arrangements, or CWSAs. CWSAs are arrangements between actors in the municipal sector and in the agricultural sector to move water where it is needed the most while mitigating some of the negative impacts of permanent water transfers.
One of the first things we did was meet with water users across the Walker River Basin from the headwaters to the lake. We asked them about the challenges that they were facing in terms of water management in the context of a changing climate.
All of our crops require water, and we of course live in an arid area where everything must be irrigated, but we're very much at the mercy of nature and nature's supply of water.
Honestly, I can't say that we've found a way to overcome climate change yet, but we have realized because of that, it's going to be very critical for us to provide that education to our community. The reason these things are happening is because we are living out of balance.
We seem to see high water years and low water years here. It can be challenging when it's really wet. I mean, it's hard to get crops in the ground. You don't know if, ground's going to flood or whatnot. And in dry years, you got to be pretty smart about what crops you're going to be putting in and where you're going to put them in. And, so I mean, everything from soil texture comes into play to the amount of water you're going to have, what type of irrigation systems you're going to use.
Normally, back say in the 80s, we've had droughts all along, but the weather patterns changed. We were having a good year this year. Last year was 1 out of 100 that we had. Generally, if we used to get about 7 out of 10 years that were good water years. Now it seems like it's about 3 or 4 out of 10.
So an important part of the project is understanding how water, snowpacks, and then patterns of snowmelt are going to change in these basins under different climate change scenarios. That involved hydrologists from DRI as well as Colorado State. Part of the project that I was involved in more heavily was the hydroeconomic modeling. So this is kind of coupling hydrologic models of these study basins with economic models. So we can see, how changes in time in a snowpack are going to affect water availability and how that's going to translate into economic outcomes, such as, acres under cultivation, net farm revenue. A final big component of the model is there's a number of projects associated with snowpacks that are looking at these issues more broadly, like beyond the case studies. So there's some kind of theoretical economic work looking at how changes in institutions are going to affect kind of water use by producers. I myself have been involved in the modeling work of the Walker Basin in Nevada and California. The project has had regular meetings with stakeholders in the basin. This includes, environmental groups, the Irrigation District, as well as people from the State Engineer's Office in Nevada.
We're here at the Walker River Irrigation District in Mason Valley, part of the Walker River Basin here in Yerington, Nevada.
Today is March 7th, 2024. This is the regular monthly meeting. Our first item is hydrologic and economic impacts of the climate change in the Walker Basin and Western U.S. So please go ahead, Snowpack.
First off, thanks for having us. SNOWPACS is a USDA-funded project, but we have case studies as part of the project in the Walker Basin and the South Platte River Basin in Colorado. We've also done some west-wide work. And just so you know, we have about 1.5 years left on the project. We've benefited in the past tremendously from interactions with RID and with other stakeholders in the basin, and how we can make our work better and kind of more relevant for kind of practical on the ground issues in the Walker.
Over the years, some models say you're going to have this hotter, drier future. There will be a lot less water total. Some are like this green dotted line somewhere in the middle. But what pretty much all the models agree on is that the flow is going to be coming in earlier. But what is more complicated is how will these changes affect the agricultural irrigation in these regions and other downstream water needs, and what types of adaptation have the greatest chance of success.
My position currently is to kind of be a bridge between the tribes and the university and connect people as needed for different projects and programs. And so we've been able to do that. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is the shift in cycles and seasons, and we're seeing it. I mean, our winters are different and January is not necessarily our snow month, which we call it. It's kind of shifting, and so I'm curious to see what that means for irrigation districts.
So the purpose of these meetings is to weigh in with the stakeholders and stakeholder water users for this project that we identified. And so over time, we've taken their management challenges and their information needs. We've taken that back to the scientists, social and physical scientists on the project. They've taken that input and they've developed models and integrated those models to provide information, new information.
There are several types of water rights. Obviously, you have surface water rights, that's the river water, and then there's a groundwater rights. You can't just drill a well and pump the water. You have to have groundwater rights.
So part of the strategy of this operation is to find and lease those properties that have this diverse portfolio of water rights.
Yes, it definitely has to come with the water, you know.
And is there anything our project team could be doing to be more helpful?
Anytime that you come and share your knowledge with us, it is a benefit.
Our surface water right is through snow and the snowpack itself. I mean, it's extremely important for us making subtle adjustments from a planning and a managing aspect in order to maximize the flow when we have it.
We're working to create resilient communities across the Walker River Basin, and water supply has long been a threat to our agricultural communities within the Walker River Basin. So over the last 15 years, in partnership with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, we've worked with 155 farmers and ranchers on temporary and permanent in-stream flow projects. So that's working in a market setting using typical free market transactions to increase the flows of the river by either on a temporary or permanent basis converting irrigation rights to environmental stream flows.
I was pleasantly surprised at how much hydrologic science came up in the WRID meeting. So it's nice to know as a hydrologist, this sort of information is getting used by people to make decisions.
One of the real benefits of these hydroeconomic and these modeling exercises is we can quantify the potential upsides and also the downsides of the different policy levers that are available to water managers to deal with changing the snowpack in the Walker and potentially other basins as well. What we've been finding is that while the existing reservoir capacity has a tremendous impact in terms of making more water available for agriculture, there's actually diminishing returns, and we find kind of limited upside to further enhancing reservoir capacity. And in periods of drought and extended drought, when water availability is the biggest issue in the Walker, expanded reservoir capacity only really increases water availability for 1 year. We find that infrastructure alone is not going to solve the problems caused by earlier snowmelt, at least in the Walker. And our colleagues in the South Platte have similar results.
I think on the demand side, we can alter how efficiently we use water, and that can make our demand more stable in a more variable future. But the challenge there is that we can also increase our acreage and impact the groundwater table. So I think, the work that we've done has really tried to delve into the nuances and call attention to the fact that we need to be focused really on local scale issues when we're thinking about adaptation.
Another margin that we found that was really important to mitigating costs of declining snowpack was irrigators to switch away from hay towards vegetable crops. So these crops are less water intensive in terms of net farm income produced, but they are very capital intensive. So if the capital is available to allow irrigators in the Walker and other basins to make this transition, this is going to be an important potential avenue to mitigate the costs of changes in surface water availability due to declining snowpack.
Building bigger reservoirs is not the solution necessarily to some of these problems, because you need enough water in the system to create a storage. So doubling, for instance, all the reservoirs that feed into the Walker River Basin might gain you a year maybe 2 years. You only get so much for managing the supply side of the water equation. Better understanding maybe the demand side then becomes part of thinking about solutions within the system.
I think one of the reasons why this project has been successful is that we've had a tremendous continuity in terms of the principal investigators in the project. Second, and probably even more important, is that we've had really wonderful graduate students and postdocs, postdoctoral scholars, who've not only led a lot of the work, but have also, been trained as the course of this project and are now going out and becoming professionals who have an interest and a focus and experience in doing interdisciplinary work focused on water and agriculture. So I think that's going to be an important legacy of the project.